Hey everyone, Coomber Radio. It's episode 73. I know, check me out. I remembered. We're recording the podcast in advance for while I'm in Australia. As you are listening to this, I may well be in Australia, depending on how quick and hot on the buzzer you are. But today is another show with Anna. Hello.
Hello, Ben. How are you?
I'm top drawer. I would try and do a silly accent, but mine aren't as silly or as good as yours.
Actually, your American accent is pretty bad.
I just don't. I wouldn't even go there. So agreed.
You're out the path, and dear God.
Yeah, true. I just don't do it, and I won't do it again. I promise. It's one accent. It's really hard to pick up on doing an American accent properly because it's quite subtle, without going sort of redneck with it.
Well, there's different kinds, you know.
Oh, I know. There's loads.
I used to have an American roommate when I was in St. Andrews, and she used to love pretending that she was British, and it was the worst thing ever. Have I told you about her? She was like, oh my gosh, she'd be out, and especially when she got drunk, but her accent was American, but then it had this, like, wannabe British thing, and she could swear, she thought everyone thought she was British, and it sounded kind of like, hello guys, how are you? You know what I mean? It was
almost like too British so that no one believes you.
Yeah, but it was only the intonation because everything else was American. You know, it was painful. Anyway, I think it's time to come clean and tell people that I am going to be leaving the podcast. And yeah, I know. I remember. Actually, last time we recorded, I ended by saying, hey guys, now I'm going to be on a regular episode, blah, 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 I'm not going on holiday anymore. And now here I am telling people that I am leaving the show for good, and just so I can contextualize it and people don't think that you and I just broke up officially and I'm never talking to you again. Well, what happened was, before Coomber Radio started, I had this, the proteinpow podcast, and it was terrible, right? Well, I thought so. It was just me rambling on and on and on, like, just talking, and it didn't work, right? So I recorded, I think 2 episodes of that, and then I was like, oh, God, I just couldn't stand the sound of my voice. And then you and I started recording, and then, I think it was last year at some point, I hooked up with my buddy Juliet from New Jersey, and we created the Kapowcast, and we recorded 3 episodes of it, and then our sound was completely wrong. I don't know if you ever heard it, but the first episode, we were talking, and then I thought it would be really cool to introduce sound effects, and it was so bad because this one guy actually wrote in to say that he almost crashed his car because he was listening to the show. And then in the middle of it, I'm talking to Juliet, blah, blah, blah. And then I inserted a boom sound effect. And the dude said he was driving. And the boom came on. He freaked out. Anyway, so the Kapowcast, the sound was not that great. And I realized that I couldn't actually record this show and do the Kapowcast because there's just too much time. And then I was talking to Juliet last week about, what happened to the podcast, whatever, and then I realized I really want to, actually make it happen and work on it, and it's the kind of thing that if I don't sacrifice other things to do it, I'm never going to do it, Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I'm going to be working on bringing the podcast back to life with Juliet. So, yeah, I'm sorry.
So
I'm sorry.
What you're saying is this is your final hurrah.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to invite me whenever, I'm happy to do it, but I can't, commit to doing it because, yeah, the podcast could potentially work out.
Well, perhaps we'll have you back on now and again as a guest.
Okay, if you, can forgive me.
Maybe. I'm going to have to mourn for a while.
Yeah, me too. I'll be wearing black, all week.
I'm going to wear black from now on.
Until...
And the problem is I don't own any black clothes, so I'm going to have to go naked and just pretend I'm wearing black clothes. Yeah, a bit weird.
Yeah, very.
No, I mean, I'm sure everyone listening will wish you all the best in that. Some people might even listen to it. Who knows?
Who knows,
Anyway, enough of this sadness. I just wanted to bring a little update. I've met 3 different people this week that have all asked me the same thing. And a while ago on the podcast, I mean, this would have been ages ago, probably like 50 episodes ago. And obviously, when you and me chat, we talk a little bit about life and what we're doing, that kind of stuff, which is probably really boring for people. But I mentioned that I was looking to buy a health food shop to act as like a hub for loads of stuff that I was doing.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, and we talked about it. And for some reason, 3 people asked me about it. They were like, "Oh, so did you ever sort of start up the shop and that and get it running?" And the short answer is no. I decided that I didn't want to invest in that kind of business or have it. I didn't like the numbers, the time commitment. And when I looked hard at my goals, which is what we've talked a lot about, and it was a case that I just had to be honest and reflective and work out what I wanted and where, my personal and business development was going. And it didn't fit. So we binned the idea, and I'm glad I did, to be honest. Something kind of on the ground will happen. Me and Ben Gray are planning to build a facility later on this year where we live, again, to act as like a bit of a hub. We're going to run education days out of it.
Where you live?
Yeah, which is in my area, Suffolk.
Oh, right. I thought you were going to live in the building.
No. I like, heating and nice showers and things like that. Normal things. Yeah, so that's that, really.
Cool. Well, I have a workshop coming up. Maybe this will have been in the past by the time the podcast comes up, but it's on February 16th. And then they're all sold out in London until April, but there's still some spots in Brighton if someone wants to join us to cook some protein stuff.
This show is going live on the 20th of February.
All right. Well, then that means that, March should... I don't know if there will be tickets by that point, but I'm putting all my workshops up at proteinpow.com/workshops, and I'll just be updating the dates. Hoping to do one in New York City in May.
Oh, New York City, sweet.
Yeah, buddy. So it should be cool. And
when in May?
Final thing.
Oh,
what?
You're not going to Body Power, are you?
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, okay. I was going to say because that's in May.
That anyway.
Oh, okay. I'll be at Body Power.
Yeah. I don't know yet. It's been a bit complicated, that whole thing. Not going to go into that, besides saying that I'm not going to go into that.
Yeah.
So.
It's okay. I'm doing the awkward turtle for both of us.
All right. Thanks a lot. really appreciate that. Yes?
Should we do some questions?
Yeah. Question number 1. Hi, guys. All of the best over the festive period and into the new year. May all your goals be achieved. I've got a question about periodization and weight training while cutting. I've read all sorts about the benefits of varying rep ranges to build muscle from strength, style 4 to 6 reps, and then changing to higher reps. I love the podcast with Lane Norton discussing PHAT. However, if the goal is cutting while maintaining muscle, should I be doing the lower rep strength style training because the hypertrophy higher reps would be wasted due to me being in a calorie deficit? I can build bigger muscles, can I? Is there any benefit to periodization when I'm not eating in a surplus anyway? Thank you in advance from Dave. That's a long sentence.
Yeah, Dave, use commas, man. This is an interesting question, and I think most people would kind of assume my answer. But the reason why I wanted to bring this question up is because people need to remember that dieting, while we're looking at the fat loss component, you're also in a constant battle of muscle retention. No guy or no female for that matter, unless they're on a catabolic training program, should want to lose muscle mass as they diet, because this keeps metabolic rate elevated. Muscle mass is something that we strive for, has lots of different advantages. So remember, the training that you do is not just about, training for fat loss. It's about maintaining the muscle mass that you have. So really, if I'm going to be honest, a lot of the same rules apply for when you're kind of gaining muscle as when you're losing fat. I would probably recommend that you do a little bit of more high intensity or metabolically demanding training, purely because you want that metabolic stimulus and you're trying to burn, a large amount of calories in a short amount of time. But I would still do a combination of strength training and hypertrophy training, because in a calorie deficit, your body's always going to be looking to source fuel from other places. And while we'd like to think that it will tap into fat stores 100% of the time, we know that this isn't the case. And depending on the severity of the calorie deficit, the more at risk you might be for tapping into muscle tissue during this diet process. So you need to do everything in your power to make yourself as anabolic as possible, in short. So, you need high and consistent protein feedings to make sure that you're never going to tap into muscle mass just for a need for amino acids. You want to have the training stimulus there. So, going about fat loss purely from a cardio perspective, for me, is not anti-catabolic. That's more catabolic. So having a mixture of, cardio, metabolic training, weight training, probably at least 2 to 3 times a week, you're going to be constantly sending a building stimulus to the body or to the muscle tissue. So instead of having, nothing at all, the muscle is at least thinking about trying to build muscle. Granted, it doesn't have the raw materials to do it, but it's going to be more likely in a positive state for growth rather than a purely negative state, if you get what I mean.
Cool. Number 2.
All right.
Hello. Hi, Ben. First of all, thanks to you and Anna for everything this podcast provides. I can't help feeling you've started a bit of a revolution in the industry with all the free information and well-being oriented perspective. My question is quite complicated, so I hope you can help. Having decided to sort my act out a couple of years ago, I've gone from highly obese to around 10% body fat. I've done this while eating as much as I can and loving my food. However, recently a few events have gotten me feeling very low and made the latter end of 2013 a year to forget. This has completely put me off my food, and often I find myself forcing down breakfast or dinner. I know I need the nutrients and calories, but afterwards I often feel nauseous, which is something that never used to happen to me. With an upcoming ACL reconstruction, I know that I need to prepare my body as best as I can. We all know there's nothing more anabolic than a calorie, but I can't face the thought of eating. Any advice? Kind regards from Sam.
See, I thought this was a brilliant question, because really what we're not looking at here is diet, right? We're not looking, the answer that, sorry, what's his name? Is it Sam?
Sam, yeah.
The answer that Sam's trying to find is that, what strategies can we use diet-wise? The point is, every time you take in a calorie, a meal, whatever it is, you're kind of feeling sick. But the stimulus has never been in your diet. The stimulus has always been in a lifestyle factor. You're saying that there's this kind of life event that's kind of affected your mood and how you're handling things. So, I'm going to be quite frank in the fact that the only way to resolve this is to look at changing or resolving or finding mental and emotional comfort in what this life event has caused. So, you might need to sit down and reevaluate your goals. You might need to come to terms with this event if it was like a grievance, or, it's to do with a family member or a friend which is causing constant friction. You need to find a strategy to kind of shelve that. And this is another reason why I always recommend, busy people. It's why it's so important to write to-do lists. I write a to-do list before I go to bed, if I haven't done one earlier in the day. And it's so that I don't go to bed laying there thinking, oh, I've got this to do, I've got that to do, because it's going to cause me some amount of mental anguish. So I shelve those thought processes by writing a to-do list, and that it's then going to be handled the next day and you can not worry about it. And you kind of need to do the same. You need to sit down, you need to think hard about these things, you need to work out a strategy to distance yourself or resolve the situation. And then hopefully that's going to give you a positive environment to grow as an individual on a personal level. And then hopefully I'd like to think that this kind of, because it's almost what we're looking at is kind of a different form of stress-related IBS here. So, we just need to remove stressors. And then I think if it still becomes a problem, then you can look at maybe changing things nutritionally. I might say, okay, let's start to use liquid meals so they're less of a burden on the gut. Let's blend some smoothies up and just sip them throughout the day rather than taking like big gulps. Your gut can just kind of like slowly churn through it. But I think it's about you sitting down and looking at how to deal with what is a big emotional part of your life. Because emotions are really important. Like, everyone's split up with someone, had a previous relationship and it kind of, it hurt and it put us off our game. You might stop going to the gym, you might eat crap, you might go out and get drunk because you're kind of hurting almost. And you need to resolve that. And it's kind of the same situation.
Yeah, it's completely a personal thing as well. I mean, food and the kind of chasing of your goals and whatever, and the whole, I mean, I don't know if this had to do with the ACL reconstruction happening as well at the same time as something that made him feel really low. But it's important to, not only shelve those feelings, but kind of deal with them and touch base with yourself and your self-worth, if that makes any sense, and love your body, feed it, and kind of time heals.
Totally. And this might be a perfect time as well to be narrow-minded and focus on another goal. Like you mentioned, an ACL reconstruction. So part of this life event might be that you've buggered your knee up and you can't do, the things that you want to do. So focus on a different goal. Like, I'll be honest, like, if I buggered my knee up right now and I couldn't play rugby, I'd create a different goal. I'd obviously focus a lot more time on my family and my business. I would probably say to myself, right, I've been wanting to build up my chest and shoulders, for example, more, which I'm going to try and do in the off season of rugby because it's hard to do in season. And I would say, right, well, I'm going to use that as my goal for the next 6 months. I'm just going to focus on something that can be positive rather than even remotely negative, because that negative part, well, it's not going to be conductive to anything apart from a low emotional state.
And also, it's important to cut yourself some slack here. I mean, dealing with a hard thing, he doesn't go into it, but it kind of requires you to cut yourself some slack, and kind of give yourself space to feel bad and cry if you have to cry, or, rest or whatever. It's not about feeling stressed out about the fact that you feel this way and suddenly you don't really feel like so much passion for eating or working out or whatever. I mean, it's completely understandable.
Yeah, and I think there's also nothing wrong with kind of hurting as well, or short-term feeling that you're weak. It's just a normal emotion. It's like, for example, it's like men crying. People would go, "Oh my God, you're a guy, don't cry." But there's nothing wrong with kind of that, letting that emotion do its thing. Resolving that area and then going, right, I've gone through that process, I've grieved, I've come to terms with it, I've created a new focus, and now I'm back almost.
Yeah, I mean, you cried when I called you to tell you about the podcast, and that was all right. I mean, I just kind of sat there on the phone for half an hour and heard you cry, which is fine. No judging here.
I told you not to bring that up, Anna.
Sorry. Should we move on to question number 3?
Let's, yes.
Hello, Ben and Anna. Saludos from Mexico. Loving the podcast. Great information and very funny. I've learned so much listening to them, and I've already signed them waiting on for your BTN Academy to continue learning. I have, however, 2 questions. Number 1, sometimes when I'm sleeping, I wake up almost always at the same exact time. I've learned it in the podcast that it could be stress, and I'm trying to try some steps you mentioned to sleep better. My question is this. When I wake up, sometimes I have this extreme craving for sweet or just any food. I eat a low-carb, high-protein, medium-fat diet and train with weights 4 to 6 times a week. And I am an instructor of indoor cycling 3 times a week. Do I need to up my carbs, or what do you recommend for having an uninterrupted night of sleep and stop those cravings?
So this, I was going to delete this question.
Yeah.
And I was going to delete this question because it's very similar to the questions that we've had previously on females doing intermittent fasting, being on a low-calorie diet, and training all the time. And a while ago, you and me sort of buried it and said, look, we're getting tons of questions on this. this is what I recommend, and there's still among people writing in, with the same.
Yeah, but not necessarily sleeping though.
I know, but
sweet foods in the middle of the night.
Granted, so this is where I will allow this question in almost, but the thought process is the same. Now, if you're on a low-calorie diet, training all the time, and your energy's low, and you're not strong and all the rest of it, I'd like to think the solution is really simple, but it takes someone, you've got to sit down and be critical about the situation that you're in and analyse it and be strong. Now, I'd like to see what Alan's, who's written this question, his calorie intake is, because for a start...
he doesn't really say that.
Yeah, he doesn't say that. So straight away, you're doing a huge amount of training, like 4 to 6 times a week weight training. So that's 6 hours at least there. And then 3 times cycling sessions, which to be honest, sound like they might be quite intense as well. Now, I don't train that much. And if I trained that much, I'd have to be really hot on my kind of calorie intake and my carb intake. So, you're on a low carb diet, but quite a lot of the time training twice a day, like it's just counterproductive. Like you don't see any athlete eating a low carb diet when they're training, multiple times a day. It's just not conducive to optimal performance. So, you need to assess what your basic BMR is. You need to assess how many calories you burn in a training session. You need to assess as a total then what you need during the day. And probably bring your carbs up. I'd probably recommend just off the bat from what you're saying that your calories need to be about 30% protein, 35% fat, 30% carbs. Quite a kind of normal macronutrient split because you are a high exercising individual. And, waking up in the middle of the night tells me that there's potentially some stress. It might not be due to the training directly, but it might be indirectly because you're not eating enough. And also, if you're waking up craving sweet foods, your body is probably just crying out for some carbs to recover properly.
And also, if you're not sleeping, that's not, you're not probably recovering as well as you could, which is a sign that something needs to change, Exactly.
And if you're training that much, I would probably recommend that you do some kind of magnesium therapy, especially if you're not sleeping properly, especially before bed, whether you have like an Epsom salt bath, you use some transdermal magnesium, God knows what is going to be available in Mexico. I'd be surprised if you couldn't get magnesium salts.
Yeah, but come on, Ben, I think that should be afterwards. It seems pretty clear that it's a carb issue and a calorie issue.
Yeah, I think so.
After that, the magnesium would come into play, but this person, imagine that they're like, okay, well, I'm going to keep my diet as is and just like go on supplementing with magnesium. That probably wouldn't be the best solution forward.
No, it wouldn't. Not at all.
Yeah, that's a lot of training.
Yeah.
Damn, I'm tired just reading it.
Sort your calories out, sort your carbs out, and I'd like to think that you'd start getting some big improvements.
Yeah, eat some potatoes,
Potato.
Question number 2. It's part 2 of question 3, are we on? Yeah.
Yeah.
Also from Alan. I am very resistant to stimulants. I don't take pre-workout or fat burners lately, but some years ago I took them without resting. I am 22 years old and I find myself very resistant to stimulants. I try a pre-workout 1 scoop and it doesn't feel. I guess it means it doesn't feel right, or I can't feel it.
Yeah.
He just says it doesn't feel. Just a better alanine itch. I don't drink coffee, and when I do, it's decaf. I've tried not taking stimulants for periods of time, but when I try again, it's the same. Any suggestions? Thanks for answering, and keep up the great work. From Alan.
I don't feel there's kind of really a good answer here. Like, there's some people that are really kind of unsensitive to caffeine. It's the same as creatine as well. In the scientific literature, we just call them non-responders. When you give someone something and it just doesn't really seem to have any effect. And granted, these are usually small percentages of the population, but they do exist. And, if you're someone that is not really getting an effect out of caffeine. You maybe have already high adrenaline levels, or you might be quite a sympathetically driven person. And, that kind of extra adrenaline release and the effect from the caffeine in the coffee, it's just not really touching the edges. You're already kind of wired up that way. And I'll be honest, that's my only really solution.
But something I don't understand in the question is that he says he's very resistant to stimulants, right? And he doesn't feel them.
Yeah.
But then he says, I don't drink coffee, and when I do, it's decaf.
I'm assuming this is from past experience.
Okay.
But some years ago, I took them without resting. So there might be a certain amount of kind of adrenal fatigue going on under the surface that hasn't actually been resolved. Let's paint a scenario. Let's say from the ages of 18 to 20, you took a lot of caffeine and stimulants and you were quite sensitive to them. And actually, over that period of time, you caused yourself a lot of adrenal fatigue by that combined with a lot of exercise. And then now you've actually got quite a advanced form of adrenal fatigue, and when you drink caffeine, your body doesn't actually stimulate any cortisol, or the cortisol half-life is very low. So this might be a reason why you don't feel caffeine, because your adrenals are actually quite fatigued. And that actually won't resolve itself unless you probably reduce your training load right down, you increase your calories, you increase your carbohydrate intake, which you're going to need to bring up. Like, if you sit down and work this stuff out and you go, oh my God, I'm like 1,000 under, don't start eating an extra 1,000 calories. Work up slowly by about 100 calories a week. And that might be the other reason why you're not feeling the stimulants, is because your adrenals just aren't working properly, and you're just going to have to rehab them. So along with what I've just mentioned, you're probably going to have to take maybe an adrenal glandular short term to provide some adrenal substrate in the bloodstream, and maybe like a broad spectrum Nutricol that actually nourishes the nutrients that are used by the adrenal glands to produce cortisol and do its many other functions. Cool.
Is part of the reason that you're going on decaf an adrenal thing then?
Yeah, because my hormone profile showed that I'm quite adrenally fatigued.
Really? When did that happen?
What, you mean when did I have my test done?
When did you find out?
I did them at around the second week of December 2013.
And what happened?
Well, they came back saying that I was adrenally fatigued. Or I had not adrenally fatigued, I had high levels of cortisol.
All right. Because of stress, you assume.
Yeah. We talked about this on the podcast, remember?
Yeah. But that's why you kind of ditched caffeine and are now on decaf. And are you taking any other measures?
Yeah, I'm taking about 4 different supplements that have been recommended to me. One of them is an adaptogen blend. I've got some SAMe, some folic acid, and some tribulus tincture, all to do with how my hormonal profile is currently functioning and what we're trying to achieve over the next 3 months.
And you're retesting soon, I imagine?
Yeah, we'll probably retest in about a month and a bit, probably about 6 weeks.
And did you feel when, before you got the test results, could you kind of tell that this was your situation at the time?
Not really. My sleep was affected a bit more than normal. I knew that I had a lot going around in my head, and this was purely from trying to build TDT and ditch the diet at the same time while going through 1 or 2 other issues in a business. And it was just a case of being mentally very busy with everything that I was doing, talking, coaching. So I had to kind of, I kind of felt that I was handling it mentally. I mean, granted, I was just sort of hanging on, so to speak. But it was obviously affecting my physiology far more than I realised.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. And do you feel different now every time,
Yeah, I think if you were to ask me, is what you're doing having an effect, or is the supplements kind of working, which is always going to be people's questions, as a combative measure, yes, but I think it's a lot more to do with me having delegated a lot of stuff in my work day, trying to get away from my emails a lot more, systemizing things, and coming to, something that I've tried to instill in myself is, I'm a doer type individual. I like to get things done. I'm very highly motivated. And sometimes I'd think if I didn't get some stuff done in a day that I wanted to, like, I'd be a bit annoyed at myself. But now I'm of the opinion that, like, tomorrow's another day. It will get done. People can wait, whatever.
That's interesting. It's always interesting hearing, your own story and perspective.
Yeah, so I'll update people in a couple of weeks' time as to when, as and when.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because I was really curious when you were talking about, you going off coffee, because I thought, oh my God, you're like the biggest proponent of coffee. But yeah, it's a great point that, sometimes when you're really stressed out and then you're loading your body with caffeine, it's not really the greatest of combinations, which I guess happens a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I've
stressed out needing the kind of buzz and just caffeinating all the time. Yeah,
I mean, we had a little moan about this, probably about 10 or 20 podcasts ago, and I talk a lot about caffeine consumption, and I know people love coffee, and I love coffee, and luckily I have a great decaf coffee, so I've got a direct replacement, and it doesn't even bother me. But people go like, I need coffee, and I'm like, yeah, but you need to sort your health out. Like, your body is not healthy. There's lots of things that need rehabbing. Your adrenals are fatigued. You're stressed. You need to ditch your coffee. No, I can't ditch coffee. And I'm like, are you fucking serious? Like, you're sacrificing all these different areas of your health just for a drink.
Well, people often don't put those things together.
I know.
They don't think of coffee as something that could be on the way or at all relevant to their overall nutrition.
I know, and it's crazy.
Well-being, I guess.
Yeah, and there's people. Throughout, I've been getting a lot of feedback at the moment regarding performance spray, which we've talked about before. And people have sort of said, I haven't been able to feel it, or I haven't noticed an effect. And I'm like, well, what's your caffeine intake like during the day? And I'm like, oh, I drink tea and coffee all day. And I'm like, it doesn't matter whether you've taken transdermal caffeine, oral caffeine. Like, if you're plunging coffee or caffeine into your body all day, when you want it to have an effect, it's not going to have an effect. Because A, you've got it circulating around your bloodstream all the time. And B, your sensitivity is just that much lower.
Are you then saying that people that drink caffeine regularly should not even bother with the spray?
No, because we're still getting a lot of... I think it depends... With any kind of product or supplement to kind of enhance or change performance... And it's kind of the same with everything. Everyone has an expectation of how something will work. And when you enter a situation with a certain expectation, if your expectation isn't met, there's obviously failure or something that you didn't work. Now, that's why I'm trying to educate people so much on why you would use performance spray, if you would at all. Because I don't want you to buy it and then go, well, I expected this and it didn't work. And I'm like, well, that's not how I said it would work. So your expectation is now on my shoulders saying that my product failed because you had a totally different expectation of it. And that's why we're trying to be really clear of how and why you would use it and how to best set up its use. Because I just don't, I don't want people or for me to have to kind of coach people through this expected failure.
But I mean, one of the biggest things that people say, Will, is like, well, I just drink caffeine and it's fine.
But what do you mean? That they feel fine?
No, in the context of the spray. Like, I noticed some people commenting and saying that, oh, I just drink coffee. But the issue has more to do with evening training, correct?
Yeah, I mean, one of the big advantages of the product is it's in and out of your bloodstream within 60 to 90 minutes. So, if you're training at 6 o'clock at night, it's perfect. You're not got caffeine floating around in your bloodstream till midnight. And I had a conversation with someone this morning, and he's a close friend of mine. He was like, I never drink coffee, but when I do it pre-training and I get a huge buzz. And I'm like, you won't get that off performance spray. And he's like, oh, that's what I like. And I said, in that case, my product is not for you. It's simple as, like, it won't give you a really big buzz. But he then says he gets jittery. But then I'm saying, well, that's then a side effect that isn't positive. So you're getting this kind of buzz, but then you're getting jittery, and then you're getting a bit of a come down. So I recommended going off caffeine altogether for 3 weeks and then coming back onto performance spray. So you kind of you normalise your perception of energy and what it feels like to be kind of, we'll call it high, which it kind of is. It's a mild high. And then I think the response to the product would be far better, and your long-term health would be benefited more because of what you're actually using to stimulate a training effect. And this is one of the reasons why I developed it, because I just think it's so much healthier.
But what about the antioxidant benefits of coffee?
Well, again, that can be found in decaf coffee. You can also get it in other forms. But, don't get me wrong, that's one of the huge pluses of coffee. It does have awesome antioxidant effects. I'm not going to lie there. But then I take an organic decaf coffee, so I'm going to be getting antioxidant benefits anyway.
You get it from Mouth Place, right? The Mouth Place, what's it called?
I get it from the Mouth Place, yes.
What's it called?
Mouthmuth.
And you order it through the phone? Because I was checking their site, and it doesn't look like you can just get on there and order.
Yeah, you just order over the phone. You tell them what kind of coffee you like, what your tastes are, whether you like it fruity or strong, or, and then they kind of send you stuff that they think you will like based on your taste profile.
Cool, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Nice. Did you know that I bought a temperature kettle yesterday?
Oh, cool.
And was learning all about it and the different temperatures in coffees and teas. And I actually had no idea. I kept, adding boiling water to everything. But interestingly, green tea needs 85 degrees Celsius, and then oolong needs 90 degrees. And then like coffee for French presses needs 95 degrees, and then black teas need 100.
There you go.
How interesting, no?
I know, it's hot drink science.
Yeah, well, it's flavor extraction, and I was actually testing it because you can really tell the difference in flavor when you boil like a green tea with 100 versus 85, and it sounds weird, but
it goes more bitter, doesn't it?
Yeah, like the tannins and stuff. You can feel it kind of seems to brew in a weird way, if that makes any sense.
Oh, yeah.
But cool. I'm going to move on to the final question because we are rambling a lot. Question number 4. Hi, Ben and Anna. Ben, you recently emailed me the rugby nutrition ebook that you developed, and I have adopted in my training regime as you advised. Along with listening to the podcast for a few months, I've changed the way I eat on training days. I'm taking a bit of a carb backloading approach to my training at the moment, with 3 gym sessions and 2 rugby field sessions. We are in pre-season at the moment and are doing a lot of running, and I found that switching to high-fat and high-protein throughout the day gave me a profound amount of energy and concentration during training. I don't do that well on carbs and have always felt burdened by thinking that I eat a whole lot of carbs throughout the day to be at my best. My body composition is changing for the better, and I'm looking forward to game day where I can play around with a few things that you've suggested. Quick question though. Is it worthwhile for me to take BCAAs on the drive home from training if my goal is optimal recovery? Or should I take them before training? I'm not eating until around an hour after training. Thank you from Australia, Jake.
This is cool, and it's a nice little testament to how playing around with your macronutrients can give you a lot more energy, and it's something that we go on about on the podcast, or I do a lot, in terms of, yes, there's value in all the macronutrients, but there's a split that works well for a lot of people, and it's different. I eat the same to how Jake is talking about here. I gravitate more towards protein and fat during the day, and carbs at night. That works for me. I get good energy. I've got great recovery, but it's something I've kind of worked on over time, and I fine-tuned it. And this is what I implore everyone to do with their own eating and training. But to answer Jake's question, is it worth taking BCAAs on the drive home? Probably not. If I was going to be brutally honest, I think there's a certain amount of, or there's a lot of research, sorry, to say that if your protein is consistent throughout the day and it reaches like a minimum requirement, let's say 1 pound per pound of body weight, 1 gram per pound of body weight, sorry, you're going to have enough protein to protect muscle mass, get a training effect, stay anabolic, etc. If you've got a bit of money to play around with, could we argue that potentially throwing in, some amino acids during training could be beneficial? Like, I think so. So me personally, I take on a mix of BCAAs and dextrose while I train. We're often training for up to 2 hours on a night. So I provide a small raw fuel substrate while we train, and I just take about 10 grams of BCAAs and about 20 grams of dextrose, and I just sip that over the 2-hour training session. But I don't think it's a problem, you leaving it an hour and then eating. I actually prefer waiting about 45 minutes till I eat after training, because it sounds silly, but I feel ready for it. I feel that kind of everything's left my body, everything's normalised, blood flow is resumed, and I kind of get a hunger signal, and I kind of like eating when I get a hunger signal. For me, it feels natural, it feels real, and I feel like I enjoy the food more.
Yeah.
Cool. That is the end of the questions.
That is the end of, there is no more. That is the final question.
And that is the end of Anna.
Well, I sure hope not. Yeah.
Just before we do wrap up, just want to mention getting quite a few emails about the Lane Norton tour, which is happening in May. We haven't been over any specific details in terms of the actual logistics. So just in case anyone is concerned, Lane Norton is coming over to the UK in May. Me and him are doing 2 and 3 day nutrition and training camps. The first 2 days are nutrition, the third day is training, but there's only 20 places per 3-day event, so we're only taking 20 people on the third training day. And we're in London on the 3rd and the 4th of May, and then the 5th of May is the training camp. We're in Dublin on the 7th and 8th of May, and then the third day training camp is on the 9th of May. And then we're in Newcastle on the 11th and 12th of May, and the third day training camp is on the 13th of May. So in 3 different locations, hopefully we've hammered everything, the south of England, north of England and Ireland. But basically all the info is at lanenortonuktour.co.uk. We talk about macronutrient considerations for fat loss, how to reverse diet to avoid weight gain rebound, supplements for fat loss and detoxification, tracking methods, contest preparation considerations, the optimal way to do cardio, which I think will be a great topic by Lane. Food is not just physical, it's psychological. Why recovery is your limiting factor, the endocrine impact of training and nutrition, and then muscle building meals. They're most of the topics that we're talking about. So get involved. It's going to be freaking awesome, man.
Oh, there it was, your American accent.
Yeah, I just do little spells where I feel confident.
Wow, awesome.
Cool. Well, Anna, thank you very much for your dedication in the last 73 episodes of the podcast where you have been involved.
Well, 35 or something.
Well, if and thereabouts.
In spirit. No, thank you. It's been a journey, It's been a lot of fun, and I appreciate a lot of people's awesome comments and everything. And I'm still alive and around, and I hope people also sign on to the Kapow cast.
And that's what it's going to be, what it's called?
Yeah, well, the first 3 episodes that I was telling you about with the special effects, they're actually on iTunes. We're going to add on to them or replace them altogether, because we're going to kind of relaunch the show to be what we intended it to be from the beginning.
Yeah.
Juliet is a beast. She's a PhD nutritional science student in New Jersey, and she's awesome. We have a lot of great humor. She's cool. She's very cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that's where I'll be living in the world of podcasting. And also I should finally mention it officially that I have a new book coming out. I haven't officially announced it yet because, I wanted it to be a surprise, but it's kind of a big deal. And it's going to be out in May all over the world. It's with a publisher, and it's going to be really cool and pretty crazy. So,
well, in May then, why don't we do a guest show where you come back on and we can talk about the book and do some Q&A stuff and that?
Then, that would be awesome. Yeah, I mean,
let's do it.
we're gonna see if we can throw me on TV with a book as well. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of exciting stories to tell around the May season.
Oh, brilliant! Nice.
All right. Well, thank you, Ben. It's been a journey, and I wish you the best for the rest of the podcast.
Yes, it will be good. We've got lots of cool stuff happening. We've got some crazy guests coming up, and I'm filling my boots really big and trying to shoot for some really cool big guests, especially from the USA. People think it can't be done, but God, you got to try, hey?
Yeah, keep rocking it. And the only thing I do feel a bit really sad about is the end of the banana.
Yeah. It will be no more.
Unless you look for another co-host called Anna, this is the end of the banana. Or maybe you could get a Hannah. It could be Bahana.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't really work. Hey, Bahana. Yeah, no.
Well, I don't even have a replacement co-host yet. I don't know what I'm going to do. Well, I know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to sit here and cry. But I'm sure I'll work something out and something will happen. So it's all good.
Yeah, I mean, if you need any help or whatever until you find a replacement, I'm here. I'm alive.
You can't just say I'll fill in until you find a replacement. That's like, well, I'm busy, but I'm not. I've got to do the Kapow cast, but I'll help.
No, I know. I just feel kind of bad about giving you complete no notice. I'm doing the podcast. See you later.
Yeah, bye. Enjoy making your podcast.
I kind of assume you'd have a long list of guests ready to take over. I mean, a guest by which I mean co-host type folk.
Oh, mate, I've just maybe thought of one while we've been on. Interesting.
See? Exactly. That's what I thought.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, okay. Anyway.
Female? Child?
Female. Did you say a child?
Well, you never know, Some are funny.
No, I don't. I think they need a little bit of knowledge, and there's not many children that are well-versed in the field of fitness and nutrition.
Well, I hope you get someone with a really good diction.
What, to make me sound better?
Well, no, yeah. I don't know what I'm going on about. It's a lot of wind out there right now.
Yeah. Anyway, let's go because I've got to record another podcast after this. With someone else who doesn't want to record a podcast.
All right. Doesn't want to. All right. Well,
thank you very much for listening, everyone. If you've enjoyed the show, do me the massive honour of sharing it around Facebook, Twitter, iTunes. It means a lot to me to spread the show. Please share the love. Anna, I wish you all the best. Ciao, farewell, bon voyage.
Yep. See you from the Kapowcast, buddy.
Oh, yes. Ciao.
Bye.
Hey, everyone. Ben Coomber Radio, episode number 72. As you get this episode, I will be in Australia, hopefully tanning myself and not working, but pre-recording a fantastic show. I've got a very intelligent guy on the end of the line, Dr. Tom O'Brien. How are you?